I love to ball on a budget, and here's how you do it in Fort Lauderdale. I'm talking Ritz-Carlton passes for 75 bucks, pool access, beach access, towel service, all the 5-star bragging rights and Insta shots without the 5-star price tag. And here's something else nobody tells you. That water taxi, I thought it was just transportation and basically like a taxi on water, hence the word water taxi, but turns out it's actually a really cool sightseeing tour. Plus, I'm gonna show you the one hotel I actively seek out every single time I go to Fort Lauderdale, the parking trick that saves you from dragging bags through a hot garage, and why you should always compare flights into another airport when you're taking a cruise out of Port Everglades. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship, and let's get into a discussion about Fort Lauderdale. First, let's talk about the port basics and terminal layout. Now, Port Everglades stretches across Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and Dania Beach. It's way bigger than most cruisers realize, but even with 8 active terminals, it still feels smoother and simpler than the madness at Port Miami, because that port is absolutely massive. At Port Everglades, you'll get clear signage as you arrive, but always double check your cruise documents so you know which terminal to aim for. And the ship names will be up on signs showing you and directing you which way to go as well. And when it comes to getting to the Fort Lauderdale cruise port, this is one of the easiest ports to access in the United States. I love the fact that the Fort Lauderdale airport code FLL. It is just 3 little miles away from Port Everglades. Barely enough time for your Uber driver to say, welcome to Fort Lauderdale before you're there. But here's the smart move. Always compare prices from both FLL and Miami International Airport, which is MIA. I have flown into Miami plenty of times because airfare was significantly cheaper there than to FLL, and it made the 45-minute drive well worth it. And a lot of times when you're booking domestic flights, the days of getting discounts booking round trip are gone. So a lot of times I'll find a cheaper leg from my home airport, maybe into Miami. I'll Uber over to Fort Lauderdale, and then I'll fly home from Fort Lauderdale or FLL airport. So always make sure you shop both airports when you're looking for flights, and make sure you're looking at one-way legs as well, because you can save a whole lot of money. Now, regardless of which airport you fly into, MIA or FLL, even though FLL is very close to Port Everglades, you still gotta figure out how to get there. Now, one option that a lot of cruisers like are cruise line transfers. Most cruise lines offer transfer service from FLL to the port, but this is highway robbery. As one example, Carnival's runs about $25 per person. So if you have a family of 4 and you book Carnival transfer service to get from FLL or Fort Lauderdale Airport to Port Everglades, you're gonna spend $100 to go 3 miles. Don't do that, that's dumb. Now, cruise line transfers can be of value if you're just one person or you're really anxious. Maybe it's your first cruise, you don't travel a lot, you don't fly a lot, because they are coordinated, they're reliable. But if you're traveling with friends or family, and definitely with more than 2 people, Uber or Lyft is almost always gonna be a faster, more convenient, and cheaper option. And speaking of rideshare, Uber and Lyft usually runs about $15 to $25, but that's for an entire car full of people. And some Ubers can fit extended numbers of people. And that's gonna take that short trip from FLL to the port. From Miami Airport, it's gonna be a lot more expensive, probably $45 to $75, depending on the time of day and things like surge pricing. Still worth it if you saved money on your flights. Now, if you are flying in the night before your cruise out of Port Everglades, which is always recommended, some hotels offer cruise shuttles, and cruisers kind of get obsessed about cruise shuttles, so don't get too hung up on it because they are pretty rare to find free. A lot of them have them, but they're gonna charge you for it. And at a cost of $9 to $20 per person, it's way cheaper just to use rideshare. Now, another option to consider if you're flying into an airport other than FLL is Brightlane or Tri-Rail. Brightlane is a great train option in Florida. It's modern, it's fast. It's actually not as cheap as you might think. But if you're flying into, say, Orlando, and you're doing an Orlando trip before or after your cruise out of Port Everglades, Brightline does run from Orlando to South Florida. Another option is Tri-Rail. It's the cheaper, slower cousin. It works, but don't expect luxury. Now, here's my favorite Port Everglades hack, the best way to get around my secret weapon, and that's my guy Hector. He's my go-to private driver. Now, this is not the cheapest option. Flying into FLL and you're cruising out of Port Everglades, just book an Uber. It's significantly cheaper. But if you're flying into Miami International Airport, or you're flying in, you got time to kill and you want to see some things, this is the way to do it. He is a private driver. I met him a while ago. He started with just one SUV. Now he has a small team. He only drives cruisers. He has a Mercedes Sprinter van, and he gives you top-notch service. This is not an Uber, this is black car service. He'll pick you up from any local airport, and again, he does those private city tours. If you're interested in booking Hector, I'll give you the information below, so check it out. But again, if you're just going from the Fort Lauderdale Airport to Port Everglades, 3 miles, Uber is the move. Now I want to take a quick pause to talk a little nerdy, because I love this kind of stuff, and I hope you do too. Fun fact, did you know that Port Everglades didn't even exist until the 1920s? It was dredged from a lake called Lake Mabel, and the original plan involved President Calvin Coolidge pressing a button from the White House to open it. But the funny thing is, The button did not work. There was no explosion. There was no big fancy grand opening, just awkward silence and crickets. But the port did bounce back nicely. Today it handles nearly 3 million cruise passengers a year. So it's certainly dwarfed in comparison to its sister port, Port Miami, but it still boasts some hefty numbers. Now, not everybody flies into their cruise. So if you are a driver, let's take a minute and talk about cruise port parking. Here is the pro move. Pull up to the terminal first at Port Everglades, unload with a porter. They're available there. They'll take your bags. It costs you nothing, although tips are generally kind of expected. Most cruisers tip anywhere from $2 to $5 per bag, a little bit more if they're bulky or oversized or heavy. Drop off with a porter, leave your tip, and then go park, because nobody wants to drag luggage across a hot parking garage, especially in the South Florida humidity. As for parking costs, at the time of this video, it was $20 a day for standard cars, $25 for oversized, and you do not need a reservation. Just bring a credit or a debit card. And there are some hotels near the port that offer park and stay packages where you can stay at the hotel, you can park your car there, it's included in your bundled rates, and they will shuttle you to the cruise terminal. And then quick tip, same thing when you're parking at the airport. Always, always, always snap a photo of where you parked, because trust me, you're gonna forget. I don't care how good your memory is, you're gonna forget. And when you get off on debarkation day, it's chaotic. You can expect traffic most heavy between 8:30 and 10:30. You're probably gonna forget where your car is parked, so make sure you leave at the optimal time for you and consult your pictures so you can find your car. Now, speaking of getting on and off the ship, let's talk about embarkation. I love embarkation in Port Everglades because it's super fast, but only if you show up in your boarding window. Now, not all cruise lines use boarding windows, but many of them do. If you arrive early, sometimes you'll be left waiting. And if you arrive too late, you might be put in a latecomer's line. So try to arrive during your boarding window if you can. And again, when it comes to the luggage, those porters are there curbside. They are in abundance. I've never had an issue with porters here. If you are gonna check your bags, it's helpful to have your luggage tags attached, but if not, they can help you with that as well. And always, 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 this is critical. If you're checking your bag on a cruise, always keep important valuables, medications, absolutely keep your passport, your identifying documents, your electronics in your carry-on. Never in a checked bag. Once you're inside, it's pretty smooth moving. It's security, check-in, and you're typically on board within 45 to 60 minutes, worst case scenario. They have accessible entries, they have elevators, they have seating, it's all there, it's really nice. And if you need wheelchair assistance, you can request it in advance or you can request it once you're curbside. And now let's talk about the cruise port in general. Even though it's a smaller cruise port in comparison to Port Canaveral and Port Miami, it's still pretty big. It can fit up to 8 ships. They do have free Wi-Fi in most of the terminals. There are ATMs near the parking areas, and it's just 3 miles from the Los Olas Boulevard. And that's a pretty cool place to visit. I've been there many times. There's also different kiosks and visitor areas that are scattered throughout. But as for a cruise terminal, it's pretty nice, pretty efficient, no complaints. Now let's talk about what to do when your cruise is over. You're ready to go home, you're flying home, but you can't get a flight out until really late at night. This has happened to me more times than I can count. And I hate sitting at the airport for hours on end. And it's important to know a lot of Florida airports, because of the amount of cruise travelers they get, will not let you check your bags more than 2 hours before your flight time. So then you're actually stuck in an airport, but even worse, you're stuck in the entryway. You can't go and access, the Starbucks and the restaurants and the things like that. So what do you do? Now, there are a few things you can do. I've ended up in this situation many times. My go-to thing is to book a day room. There you get a private hotel room. You get pool access if that hotel has a pool. There's a shower. Sometimes I get off a cruise, it's early in the morning, I feel kind of gross. It's a really great place to post up, shower, nap, turn the air conditioning on, watch TV, have really good Wi-Fi, but you don't have to pay for a full night because it is a day room. It is meant for day use. And this is also a great way to extend your vacation at a low cost. This also applies if you're flying in the same day of your cruise. Do not recommend. I have done it at times, I admit, but do not recommend. But if you do have a really early morning flight, you fly in the day of, you can't board the ship till maybe 2 o'clock, you got a whole day to fill, it works for this as well. My go-to for day rooms and day passes is Resort for a Day. I'll drop the information below. And another option is Resort Pass. A great option in the South Florida area, if you again want to ball on a budget, is Ritz-Carlton day passes can sometimes go as low as $75. So if you ever wanted to experience the Ritz-Carlton, you don't have to pay for a night stay. That's very expensive. but you get a day pass for a bargain and be in full baller mode. Now let's talk about hotels, right? So say you're actually flying in the night before, highly recommended, and or you aren't maybe flying out right away after your cruise. So let's talk about the best hotels in Fort Lauderdale for cruisers with shuttle service. My absolute, without a doubt, number one top pick, and they do not pay me for this video, I do not get payment for any videos, is Hilton Fort Lauderdale Marina. It's one of the few hotels and cruise port destinations that I always actively seek out. Usually I use credit card points and just go with whatever I have points for, but this is one that I actually will pay for, even if I don't have the points. So it's Hilton Fort Lauderdale Marina, and I'll tell you why I love it so much. It's newly renovated, it's clean, it's modern, and it's right on the marina. The views are absolutely gorgeous. The pool area is fantastic. And it's also steps away from the Fort Lauderdale Water Taxi, which I recently tried for the first time. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, I thought it was just transportation, like literally a water taxi, but it's actually a really cool sightseeing tour. So I did the water taxi, we had a captain. The cool thing is he points out all the rich people's mansions and yachts. So that alone is worth the ride. And he has a lot of like local history and knowledge. And it's just really interesting. And you can get off at different stops, you can get back on, and it's really, really cool. So whether or not you stay at the Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina, I recommend trying out the water taxi if you have time to fill, because it gets you to a lot of the big spots in Fort Lauderdale really easily and in a scenic way where you actually learn some cool stuff as well. Also, with the Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina, they have an amazing rooftop restaurant called Olive and Sea. Like most hotel spots, it's not the cheapest or value option, but I absolutely love the food. It's Mediterranean fare, and my whole family loves it so much that even if we fly in late, we always have to go to Olive and Sea when we're staying at Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina. Oh, and if you're staying at the Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina, it's so close to Port Everglades, you can literally see it. Now, technically you could walk there. I do not recommend it. They do offer a shuttle service, but it's not free. Your best bet, just hire an Uber. Now, another option is Comfort Suites Airport and Cruise Port. This is a little bit more of a value option. It's in Dania Beach, and it includes free breakfast. It also has a shuttle to the port. It's $15 per person. So it's not gonna be cheap. Again, just Uber. It's so much cheaper. And in terms of location, Comfort Suites is only about 3 miles from the port, which is about a 10-minute drive. Another great option for hotels in Fort Lauderdale for cruisers is Hyatt Place Cruise Port. It sits right next to Harbor Shops, so you've got food and essentials nearby. They have free breakfast and Wi-Fi. They do have a port shuttle, but at $9 per person, unless you're a solo cruiser, it's probably cheaper. Again, shocker, just take an Uber. If you do want to take the shuttle here or at any of the other properties, usually you just have to schedule that at check-in. And Hyatt Place, like the others, very close to Port Everglades. In particular, it's about 3 miles, about 10 minutes from the port. Another great value option is Courtyard Airport and Cruise Port. Now, this is near the Tri-Rail. So if you are all about the Tri-Rail, this is a great option. And it's also close to the airport. Now, in this case, they have a shuttle. It's 20 bucks a person. Highway robbery, don't take their shuttle, take an Uber. And finally, another more value option, because also you should know, be prepared for sticker shock, because value options in South Florida, both Fort Lauderdale and Miami, can still be very expensive. But another, relatively speaking, value option is Hampton Inn Airport North. This is a cruiser favorite. They offer free hot breakfast, Wi-Fi, it's well rated, it's well regarded, it's close to the port, only about 10 minutes, 3 miles. And they do offer a reliable shuttle, but again, broken record here, it's 15 bucks. So cruisers, you guys get so obsessed about finding hotels that have a shuttle to port. They're almost never a good deal. Finding one that has a free shuttle to the port, those are few and far between. And almost every place that does offer a shuttle, they're gonna charge you for it. Unless you're a solo cruiser, one person, it's almost always cheaper just to take an Uber, especially in Fort Lauderdale where everything is so close to the port. Now, if you want to turn your cruise into a little bit of a beach vacation, you're not just looking for a value option, there are some great beach options in Fort Lauderdale. It really delivers. These hotels offer the perfect mix of ocean views, comfy beds, and quick port access. W Fort Lauderdale is right across the street from the beach, and it does not hold back. Here you'll get complimentary loungers, towels, umbrellas, plus oceanfront dining and a pool like it's from the scene of a movie. It's not cheap, but it is close. It's only about 4 miles from Port Everglades. Lago Mar Beach Club and Resort is a hidden gem. It's pricey, but it's nice. It's quiet, family friendly. It's got 500 feet of private beach with 0 resort fees. That's another thing you gotta check when you're booking these hotels. Is there a resort fee? And if you have a branded credit card, like I have a Hilton and a Hyatt card, sometimes I can get those resort fees waived because of that card. So always make sure you check on that. Hotel Marin is part of Hilton's Curio collection. So you get that boutique charm, but with Hilton consistency. And again, If you have a Hilton card, you may get a waived resort fee. If not, the resort fee is $45, but that covers your beach chairs, your towels, yoga classes, and even a daily cocktail. And this hotel as well is close. It's only about 3 miles or 10 minutes from the cruise terminal. Now let's talk about getting off the ship. Debarkation in Port Everglades usually starts around 7 a.m. And if you carry off your own bags, sometimes cruise lines call this self-assist, you can be some of the first people off the ship. In most cases, customs now uses facial recognition, at least if you're traveling with a passport, but have your passport handy just in case. But usually you're off the ship pretty quickly, especially with that facial recognition. When you're flying back home, aim to book flights no earlier than 11 a.m. And you can only do that in Fort Lauderdale safely without anxiety because Port Everglades is so daggone close to the airport and traffic is usually not as much of an issue here as it is in Port Miami. Now, if you did find a great flight home from Miami International Airport and you got to make the 45 minutes, sometimes longer in traffic, make sure you account for that time. And in that case, I would not book a flight home any earlier than noon at the very earliest. Now, if you are stuck in a situation where you have that late flight home, there are a lot of things you can do. I mentioned earlier, booking a day room, that is my go-to thing. Sometimes you can find luggage storage options. I use Radical Storage. I'll drop a link below. They'll store your bags for you. Usually it's something like a UPS store. You pay a few bucks per bag, but you can then like go to the mall, go to the movies, kill time, whatever, get your bags, go back later. And of course, you can always rent a car. Now, I don't love driving around in South Florida. Fort Lauderdale is a little bit better than Miami, where I find Miami drivers are absolutely psychotic. I'm sorry, Miami friends, but you know it's true. But renting a car is a great way to get around as well. And also you can book my guy, Hector. I'll drop his link below. He doesn't just drive people from hotels and airports to cruise port, but he actually does city tours as well. So with that, you can throw your bags in the back of his nice vehicle. He'll take you around, stop for as long or as little as where you want to go, and you call the shots. And speaking of things to do in Fort Lauderdale, it's a pretty nice place. There's lots of things to do. I mentioned earlier Las Olas Boulevard. That's a great place to just wander. There's shopping, there's rooftop bars, there's boutiques, there's galleries, there's some great empanadas. There's a lot of things to do just walking around. Fort Lauderdale Beach is a nice beach. It's wide, it's clean, it's perfect for a long walk or beachfront drink. It's quiet, it's relaxed, and much less hectic than Miami. Dania Point is a really great place. I actually got well acquainted with Dania Point. I actually used to call it Dania and people told me it's Dania. I think I'm still pronouncing it right, but if not, I'm sure people will tell me in the comments. But anyway, during the government shutdown, I had a flight home from Fort Lauderdale that got canceled and I ended up being stuck in Fort Lauderdale for a couple of extra days. And I was actually staying in Dania Point area because Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina was unfortunately sold out. But I'm actually glad in this case I was in that location because I absolutely loved it. I found a little local coffee shop. There's a movie theater. There's like a little indoor golf place. There's bowling. There was a lot to do there. So just staying there and wandering around and eating and shopping and doing fun activities was really, really cool. And I mentioned this before, the Fort Lauderdale Water Taxi. It's really cool. It's part transportation, it's part sightseeing tour, and the commentary from the captain is surprisingly entertaining. And when I did recently use Water Taxi, one of the stops, we went from Fort Lauderdale Hilton Marina to Galleria Mall. It was just a few stops on the Water Taxi, and it was totally worth it. It was just fun to shop in a different area. Another great place to explore is Hollywood Beach, and in particular, the Hollywood Beach Boardwalk. It's a 2.5-mile oceanfront promenade, so it's laid back, you get some kind of retro vibes. There's lots of great food and music, and it's a really fun place to explore, especially if you love beach time. Now, if you don't mind getting out of Fort Lauderdale a little bit, another really cool, quintessentially Floridian experience is the Everglades airboat tour. It's been a few years since I've done this, but it's iconic, it's classic. If you want to see gators in their natural habitat, if you want to zip across in an airboat, it's fun, but it's loud, kind of dirty, it's wild, it's Florida, but it's definitely worth doing. So there you have it. Now you're ready to conquer Port Everglades like a pro. If I missed anything or any great insider tips or things that you love about Fort Lauderdale, Port Everglades, drop it down in the comments and let's talk ship.